Welcome to another episode of Sussex Sport Weekly podcast. I'm Matt Pole and I'm joined by Brighton Hove Albion writers Derren and Frankie Elliott, as well as Crawley Town expert Mark Dunford. Brighton Hove Albion laid down a marker for another special Premier League season as they made light work of Champions League-bound Newcastle United. Meanwhile, Crawley Town became Sussex great entertainers in both League and Cup. We'll reflect on an excellent week for both the Seagulls and the Reds and bring you all the latest from the thrilling final weekend of the 2023 Sussex Cricket League campaign. Teenager Evan Ferguson scored a hat-trick to demonstrate his remarkable potential as Albion saw off Newcastle 3-1 at home on Saturday evening. The win leaves the Seagulls sixth in the Premier League table, 3 points shy of leaders Man City, going into the September international break. What a result that was, Derren. How good were Albion and how good was Evan Ferguson on the day?
Yeah, it was very impressive, both in terms for Albion and as you say, for Evan Ferguson. But what was really important was to get the 3 points on the board going into the international break after the disappointment against West Ham. And Newcastle have been a team that Brighton have previously struggled against. Last season, they drew 0-0, never really looked like scoring. And then they took a bit of a hammering up at St James's Park on the towards the back end of the last season. Brighton was struggling with injuries back then, but and availabilities. But I think it was really important for Brighton to lay down a marker against one of these sort of perceived, big teams now. They're obviously a Champions League team, Newcastle, this season. And I just thought that win made a really big statement for Brighton that they can perform and that they can perform without Caicedo and McAllister against one of the better teams in the league. And yeah, as you say, Ferguson was just out of this world. His first goal was a good poacher's finish, good strike from Billy Gilmour, and then Ferguson was just he had that natural movement in the right place to finish it off. And yeah, I thought he was just really impressive all round. His second goal was just how he dropped deep. Billy Gilmour almost lost possession in midfield, but threaded it through to manage to find his pass, and he just stroked it into the bottom corner as though he's just like a training ground game rather than a Premier League game. And lots of people are now talking about him. It was Manchester City were rumoured with a bid or coming in with interest for the January transfer window, looking to pair him with Erling Haaland. That would be quite some strike force. But I think at the moment he's at the perfect club with De Zerbi's tactics. He's got the likes of Mitoma, Solly March on each flank, creating the chances for him. Behind, he's got the likes of Pascal Gross, Billy Gilmour threading the passes through. So for an up-and-coming striker, 18 years of age, playing in an attack-minded team like this, it's just dream time for him. I think he's at the perfect place for the time being. And I think he'll be great for the Premier League and going into the Europa League this season.
Well, Ferguson, as Derren mentioned there, has been linked with moves to Man City, but in the summer transfer window, he was also linked with moves to Man United and Tottenham. Frankie, would a move to a top six club potentially be detrimental to his development at this early stage? And do you agree with Derren's assessment of things at the moment for him?
Yeah, I mean, it's always difficult to say about whether a move would be good for a player's development or not. You can't ever argue with a move to a bigger Premier League club, especially in the top six. That's always going to have the glitz and glamour associated with it and the opportunity to win trophies. But in regards to Ferguson's development, obviously being at Brighton right now is a brilliant place to be for any young player. I remember looking at De Zerbi's comments for last week after signing Ansu Fati. He was speaking very much about a responsibility he felt to make sure that world-class talents, as he put it. And he didn't just mention Fati when he said this. He mentioned Fati and Ciso, Buonanotte and Ferguson. He said when he has world-class talent, he feels as a coach, he feels a real responsibility to make sure they reach their potential. And I feel that really shows that he believes his style of football is the best way for players to develop into great players. And he's probably not wrong, because obviously, what a place to play football. You've got a team that plays such an attacking brand of football, has lots of the ball. It's important that every player in the team is technically proficient. We've seen that right from the goalkeeper all the way through to the striker. And as Derren alluded to, you have so many chances created, each game. Why, as an attacking player, as a young attacking player, it's the best way to hone your craft and to get better. So For Ferguson right now, he is in the perfect place, as I said, because every week he will have the opportunity to score a hat-trick in some respects. If you look at the West Ham game, although he didn't score, he had a number of great chances in that game as well. So it's the perfect opportunity. But whether or not he does go, whether it be January, I mean, he is, Brighton fans won't like to hear it, but he is the next big money sale. There's no, that will happen somewhere down the line. But whether it happens in January or the summer or whatever happens, the thing that you can pretty much guarantee is that Brighton will get a brilliant deal out of it. So whenever that comes, Brighton will still manage to do it successfully and not hamper themselves. Whether it hampers Ferguson, we don't know. But right now they've got one of the best young strikers in European football, some would argue, and the way that De Zerbi plays really suits him and all the young attacking forwards that Brighton now have.
Oh, well, another young player who I thought I did really well on Saturday was defender Jan-Paul van Hecke, who returned to the Brighton starting 11 after 2 games on the bench. We all know how good Van Hecke can be. You just need to look at how he defended against Haaland towards the back end of last season. So do you think, Derren, he's done enough to force his way into Roberto De Zerbi's starting 11 on a more permanent basis alongside Lewis Dunk? Or do we expect to see Adam Webster maybe return after the international break?
Yeah, it's a really tough decision now for De Zerbi. I think Van Hecke has he was producing some really good displays towards the back end of last season, and he's now trusted by De Zerbi and trusted by his teammates whenever he comes into the team. It's not like there's a new guy coming in. It's he now comes in and he looks as though he's responsible. He looks as though he's capable of dealing with the physical threat from the Premier League attackers. And also he's good on the ball as well. He's proved a couple of times there are some really nice turns. He's composed in under the press as well. He's perhaps not up to the standard of Lewis Dunk, in that regard, but everything goes through Lewis Dunk. But he's still very, very good at it, and he will get better. Webster looked really shaky against West Ham as well. So there was a couple of occasions, especially against Antonio, where the West Ham striker really got the better of Webster. De Zerbi said before the match that it wasn't based on performance that Van Hecke came in, but I think it was. I think Webster was poor against West Ham, and he will now. I think the international break may be a good chance for him just to sort of come back and get his fitness levels up to where they can be. That's always been Webster's problem, is getting 100% fit. When he's really firing and really good, he's one of the best defenders in the Premier League and very good alongside Dunk. But he does struggle with these niggling injuries and getting his body to a position where it can deal with the Premier League. So I think once he's back to full fitness, he's a really good option to have. It's a great problem to have in a way with Van Hecke and Webster. Plus you've got Igor Julio as well, who came in from Fiorentina. So the central, Joel Veltman, he can also play at centre back. So I think the central areas are now looking very, very strong indeed. Lewis Dunk plays when he's fit, without a doubt. But there's going to be a heck of a lot of games coming up this season. Lewis Dunk's also in the England setup now as well. So if it comes to the point where Dunk does need a break, I think Webster, Van Hecke, Veltman, Brighton are really well stacked in central defence now.
Meanwhile, Billy Gilmour, I think, has quietly become a midfield metronome for Seagulls. I like Ferguson and Van Hecke. I thought he was brilliant against the Magpies at the weekend. Frankie, is Gilmour now starting to show why he's thought of so highly for the Scottish national team, and as well as former clubs Chelsea and Rangers?
Yeah, no, he really, really is. And I think what we're seeing from Gilmour now on the Brighton side is a reflection of why Brighton have been so successful in the last 5 or 6 years, despite all the setbacks. Because I remember when Paul Barber spoke on the High Performance podcast about a couple of months ago, he was asked about how they've managed to deal with people losing so many key figures in the football club, both on the pitch and off the pitch. And he said one of the key things that Brighton did, especially when Dan Ashworth left to join Newcastle, was they looked within. They looked within to promote within. Obviously, David Weir, who is now in the same role that Dan Ashworth was already at the club. They saw he had the credentials and obviously knew the club already to take that role successfully. And you can see that on the pitch as well. When Basuma left last summer, Caicedo had been there for 6 months. He took over that role as their key midfielder. You've seen it with Trossard as well when he left in January. That loss wasn't so big because of the emergence of Evan Ferguson and Karen Matoma, who'd come in the summer. And I think we've seen this obviously now Caicedo and McAllister have gone this summer. Everyone was asking who's going to replace them. Will Brighton spend a lot of money? And I always felt that part of the answer, they already had in Billy Gilmour. So when you see a performance like we did on Saturday, which he was excellent. It was a very, very classy performance, kept the ball very, very well. Like you said, kept it ticking excellently. I sort of watched that, and I think Gilmour, De Zerbi, a lot of people would have been, that's what we expected, really, because he came in with such a, all the hype from those, that performance against England for Scotland at the Euros and that, those number of performances for Chelsea in big games. That's the sort of player that he should be, really. And last year, obviously, was very, very difficult. We know there's been some issues in his private life that they've hopefully been dealt with now. Obviously, he was playing behind two of the best midfielders in the Premier League at the time. So chances were few and far between. It was difficult for him. But I have to say the sale of those two players, while everyone else was probably panicking, it's the best thing that could ever happen to him. Because I think for all the talent that is there, so far in his career, he's never had a long run of games. And the Norwich thing, he was playing in a very poor side that was struggling. So it was difficult for him to shine. He never really got a run in at Chelsea. He was, here and there, he got a couple of games and did well. Brighton last year, he didn't either. This season, I think De Zerbi has trusted him as his main man. He's proven so far that he can do it. I think this is the perfect opportunity now for Gilmour to have a long stretch in the side and really develop as a player, but also really stamp his authority in the side, which he hasn't done yet. And I think a performance like on Saturday, we can expect more of that, because that's how good a player he can be when he's given the opportunity. And it's taken the sale of two excellent footballers to get there, but I really think that opportunity will now come for him. And I think Brighton don't really have to panic as much as they maybe thought they did when they sold McAllister and Caicedo, because they have a player that can be as good as them in my eyes, on their bench. So he was excellent, and I expect to see a lot more from him.
How good was that shot that set up the first goal as well from Gilmour? Everton, I don't think I've seen a ball hit so sweetly so far this season. It was incredible.
Stinger. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Esque.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think just to add to that as well, I think that's why Brighton got him quite so cheap, because he did struggle on loan at Norwich, and I think his stock went down after that loan at Norwich, who were, like Frankie said, a really poor team. But that's why Brighton were able to get him for such a good price. He's an absolute talented player, and a great piece of business from Brighton again.
Well, Brighton are now out of action until the 6th of December, owing to another necessary, worthwhile and thriller-minute international break. As mentioned earlier, the Seagulls 6th in the table after 4 games. I know it's still incredibly early in the season, Derren, but how would you assess their season so far? What have the major plus points and positives been?
The plus points, obviously, I think for me, it's that they've started so well again after losing. We keep going back to it, but after losing their whole midfield, they're the actual focal point of the team last season, McAllister and Caicedo. I think after losing those, it was a little bit of an unknown quantity as to how they would handle, especially the bigger games. Against Luton Town, it was sort of, okay, fair enough, they've beaten Luton, but that they weren't the bigger tests. I think against West Ham, it was an odd game. They still played quite well. And I was thinking that in that midfield area, although James Ward-Prowse played quite well, they weren't overrun in midfield. They kept a lot of the ball, and it was still the same Brighton style. And against Newcastle was just a really, really good performance all round. So I think those central areas, that was where everybody was looking to see how Brighton are going to cope. And I think they have proven that they will do, and especially with Carlos Baleba coming in as well. He will add to the options in there, but yeah, lots of positives to look forward to. As you say, Van Hecker. I liked the look of Bart Verbruggen as well, who's come in the goal. It's going to be a difficult one as well, who he picks going forward, Steele or Verbruggen, but he looks very confident. He looks as though his concentration levels look very good during the match. Good shot stopping as well. And then you look at likes of Ansu Fati, who have come in as well, and with the likes of Ferguson, Baleba, I think it's looking very positive indeed. And just one final one as well, Mitoma and Estupiñán, that link down the left-hand side is very strong as well. So yeah, lots to look forward to. And Man United, after the international break, followed by their first ever Europa League game against Athens at the Amex.
And in the same, Frankie, what have the negatives and lowlights been so far at this stage of the season? I'm assuming that West Ham will probably feature quite prominently in your thinking.
Yeah, I mean, there's not many. Obviously, it feels very harsh to be criticising a side that's won 3 out of 4 games, which is a brilliant start to any. But the West Ham thing will worry them, not necessarily the way they played, but the fact that that is the way to beat them. I think the fact they don't have Caicedo anymore means they don't really have that protection from counter-attacks. And it does expose people like Duncan Webster a lot more, especially as we saw in that West Ham game. I think Antonio's hold-up play to allow runners like Bowen and Ward-Prowse off him was crucial, and that's what killed Brighton in the end. And I feel like teams like Nottingham Forest, Aston Villa, who have the quality to do that as well as West Ham, I think we could see a number of those results again this season, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because that's, De Zerbi sticking to his principles, and 9 times out of 10 it's very, very successful. But it just, especially when games come thick and fast after this international break, they're going to be playing 3 times a week. They're not going to be as fit as they were last season, because they're not going to be as well rested. It could lead to more of those results happening than we saw last year. It only happened about once or twice last season, and that was towards the end when they started to get a bit more leggy. Now that happens earlier on in the season, how are they going to cope? Because, like I said, there will be more sides like West Ham who can do that tactic well. And if they don't, if Brighton can't react to it, then they could see more sort of 3-4-1 scorelines going against them post international break.
Derren mentioned that they've got United in the next game back. I genuinely have the opinion that Brighton might end up walloping United. Does anyone else agree with that?
Yeah.
That was thing. Last year, those weren't the games they ever were beaten heavily in. Those are the games that they always deserved. I think if you look at all games against the top 6 last season, beat United twice. Liverpool they drew and they won 3-0 at home, then drew 3 all away. Chelsea they beat home and away. I mean, Tottenham they were incredibly lucky not to win away. Those games are not the ones that they should really fear. As I said, it's the games against West Ham, Aston Villa, Nottingham Forest, those Everton. Those are the games they actually need to be more wary of, because, as you say, you look at the way United have been playing this season. Brighton have got absolutely nothing to worry about. Yeah. Really, and Man United won't be going there with the tactic of, right, we'll sit in and catch them on the counter attack, because the Old Trafford crowd won't allow them to do that. So it really, as I say, you're absolutely right, Matt, that they go into that game almost slightly favourites, bizarrely. There's a very potential for them to run up a high scoreline.
I think you look at United's back 4, the potential back 4 owing to injuries, the likes of Varane being out, and you see that the front players that Brighton could potentially play against, and I think they could cause them all sorts of trouble, but we will have to wait and see. Meanwhile, Crawley Town played out a 3-3 draw at Stockport County on Saturday. The Reds trailed 2-0 just after the half-hour mark, but rallied to 3-2. Courtesy of goals from Adam Campbell, Lawrence Maguire and Dino Orsi. But Stockport substitute Isaac Aloife scored late to end Stockport a point. It was a rollercoaster of a game, wasn't it, Mark? What was the reaction after the game? It's quite a tough one to process, really, the way the game went.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, given that the week before they'd gone away and got hammered 6-0 by Swindon, when they went 2-0 down, I thought a lot of people probably thought the worst was going to happen. But they showed, I mean, the Adam Campbell's goal was so key just before the break. And then that was just after the break, so early on. And then, just to have another 2 quick fire goals. Yeah, incredible, really. Yeah, it's just a shame they couldn't hang on. But Scott Lindsay and Lawrence Maguire, their new signing afterwards, clearly the better of the Maguire brothers. They both said that. I mean, the fact that the players and the staff just went into the changing room afterwards and were so disappointed to draw 3 all away at Stockport, a team with a huge budget, and were one of the favourites to go up, got into the playoffs last year. They were disappointed. But Scott Lindsay said that the overriding feeling must be pride after that, to show that they had the character to come back from 2-0 down to lead. And just a shame they couldn't hold on. But a really good point away from home. I mean, again, we talked about their opening fixtures. Nobody was looking at any points in the first few games for Crawley. They were all predicted, and they've beaten Bradford away. They picked up a point at Salford, a point at Stockport now. So they had that one blip at Swindon where it was 6-0. But yeah, really good. Roller coaster ride. And I know we're going to come on to it, but it's been a roller coaster ride for 100 and whatever minutes. It's been incredible, really, this week.
They've been possessed by the spirit of that 95 Newcastle side under Kevin Keegan, haven't they, Mark?
They have, absolutely, yeah.
Thrilling 4-3 home win over Charlton Athletic. And I've put the pizza trophy here, and it shows my ignorance. I don't know what it's called. Is it the Papa John's trophy?
It's the EFL
it's the VFL trophy, yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, a lot of people still refer to it as the pizza trophy, so don't worry. Yeah,
no, that's fine. It's not the Johnston's paint trophy or anything like that, is it? Anyway, never mind. You were at the game for us, weren't you, Mark, on Tuesday? How much fun was that?
It was really good fun. It's the most entertaining game I've seen it, apart from when they beat Leeds 3-0, but that was entertaining in a different way. But it was definitely the most entertaining game I've seen. I mean, Charlton made a lot of changes from their normal side, but they still had a good sign out. In the second half, they had Slobodan Tedic from Manchester City on loan. So Charlton didn't come and take it as a sort of a joke or anything. Crawley, on the other hand, made 9 changes, and we saw lots of people having a lot of minutes that we haven't seen so far this season. And yeah, it was incredible. I mean, I sent you guys in our little group chat the highlights just to say, have a watch of all the goals in this, because there were some absolute quality finishes. I mean, George Dobson's strike for Charlton that gave them a 3-2 lead was an absolute stunning strike from 25 yards. Then you had Nick Cerula hit the top corner after a really good move from Crawley. And then the winner from Raf Khalil was an absolute belter, just top corner from quite a tight angle as well. So, yeah, really good game. And, I mean, yeah, we all have a bit of fun with the EFL trophy. Nobody takes it seriously. Pizza trophy. Crawley are one of the few league clubs, I think maybe one of only 1 or 2 that have never been to Wembley. They've never played at Wembley. So, I mean, I don't know if Scott Lindsay's thinking about that or anything, but why not? Why not make this season? Have the ambition. Make sure you're safe in the league, obviously, which I think they will be, given the start they've had. But give this competition a run. Why not? Go out there, and it just showed the strength and depth that they've got. Crawley, the young talent, it was a really young side, average age of 22 on Tuesday night. The oldest player was Jack Rolls, who was 24, and he's a player that hasn't had stuff, but he was absolutely superb. He ran things in midfield, and he was involved in at least 3 of the goals, I think. So yeah, no, amazing stuff to see. And Clyde Lolos as well. He is a mercurial talent. He is gonna. If he can get a run in the side, he is going to wow a few people, I think. I mean, I tweeted a video just in the warm-up of they were doing a little one-touch 6-a-side thing. And just his footwork was incredible. And he leaps like, honestly, Cristiano Ronaldo header. I'm not saying he is anywhere near Cristiano Ronaldo. I'm not being ridiculous. But his hang time, when his header, when he scored, it was just reminiscent of Ronaldo when he jumped in the air as well. So he's good on the floor, good in the air. I think we could see him starting in league games as well. It's going to be, he's going to make a difference, I think, at times.
We spoke about the fact that it's been quite an entertaining week for Crawley. The Reds have now scored 7 and conceded 12 in their past 3 games. Scott Lindsay will no doubt be delighted that Crawley have hit a rich scoring vein of form, Mark, but an incredibly leaky defence will surely be a concern to the boss, I'd imagine. Yeah,
I think it will be. I mean, on Tuesday night, there was Charlton's first goal, Miles Leeburn scored a header, and it was sort of a bit of naivety from Joy McKenna, who's, again, it was only his second start. He played in the EFL Cup as well. But you've got to remember, Joy McKenna he's been playing for St Albans in National League South for the last 3 years. So he's obviously got a lot of talent, but there's a bit of naivety there. And Scott Lindsay in the post-match interview said afterwards, he highlighted that he made 3 changes at half time. And I said, did the substitutes make the difference? And he said, no, it was me going mental at them. Because defensively, they were quite poor for the 2 goals. They scored 2 goals in 4 minutes, Charlton, to go 2-1 up. And it was, and there was a lot of naivety in there. And he said he's been going for, he showed them clips at half time. And it's like, I've been telling you how to defend all week. And he focused so much on defense, certainly set pieces as well during the week. And they just weren't doing the simple things that he had asked them to do. So, it will be a concern. But after we stopped filming the post-match interview, we sort of said to him, I said, "Oh, I bet you'd just be happy with like a good solid 1-0 or 2-0 win, wouldn't you?" And I think, honestly, Scott Lindsay would be happy if they win 4-3 every week. I mean, he won't be happy if they concede goals like they did. But, I mean, like George Dobson's goal was, anyway, he would have scored that against any defence, no matter how well you're defending. But, yeah, I think he's happy that they're scoring goals now. There was a concern. Dom Telford left in the window. Yeah. Ashley and Addison left in the window. All Crawley fans assumed that they were going to sign someone on deadline day. That never happened, and there was all concern. And then suddenly they score 7 goals through 7 different players in the last 2 games. So I don't think there's a concern with goals. But interestingly, I think because of how young they are and because of the football they're trying to play, there are going to be results like Swindon Town result. They're going to lose 6-0. But I think on the flip side, there's going to be results where they do it to other teams as well. They are going to absolutely batter a team one day, 5 or 6-0. And who knows when that might be. They've got 2 home games coming up against Newport and Tranmere, so could be those games.
Well, before we move on to Tranmere and Newport, Frankie, as a member of the coaching staff at AFC Vardinians, 1-0 win or a 4-3 win?
1-0 win. Keep the clean sheet. As a central midfielder, I'd rather keep the clean sheet.
God, I'm not going to watch AFC Vardinians in reserves anytime soon, I tell you.
Like Mourinho, bore the arse off everyone. Dear, oh dear. Anyway, as Mark mentioned there, Crawley are home to Newport this Saturday. How are they stacked, and what has Scott Lindsay had to say about the League Two clash?
Well, it's funny. I mean, I mentioned earlier about the fixtures they had at the start of the season. And Scott Lindsay said to me the other day, a lot of people said to him, "Oh God, the first time you might get some points this season is Newport at home."
Oh.
And yeah, which he never believed that, but that's what people were saying to him, and I think that's what general consensus was. But obviously they've got their 16th, and they're only 5 points off the top at the moment. I mean, such a tight league. But Scott Lindsay actually said he thinks, from what he's seen of Newport, this will be their toughest game so far. Which we're interviewing him this afternoon. We've got the pre-match, so I'm going to ask him to go into a little bit more detail about why he thinks that. Because they've played Bradford, they've played Stockport, they've played Swindon, they've played MK Dons, who are top of the league. But he thinks this one will be the toughest one. So, Newport have always been a good side. They haven't had the best of starts, I don't think, sort of middling. But, yeah, I think it will be a tough game for them. They always have good games against Newport. So, but looking at who they've got, Ben Gladwin came back last week, their skipper. I think Scott Lindsay sees him as such an important player in the team. Just that experience and the leadership he brings. And he played, I think it was something like 54 minutes, something like that on Saturday. I asked Scott how he was recovering, and he said, yeah, he was a bit sore after the game, and that inevitably, because he hadn't played all season, that was his first minutes of this season. So I think, him being better, he will be around still. Kellen Gordon, I think, is still a bit of a worry. But I mean, like I said, looking at them on Tuesday night, you could bring a lot of those players that played on Tuesday night into the side, and they will fit in perfectly. There is this massive family ethos at Crawley Town at the moment. Everybody is playing a part. They're not those people that came in on Tuesday night. They're not just fringe players; they're squad players. And Scott Lindsay sees this as a squad, and they're all. If somebody drops out, someone can come in. I mean, the prime example, Travis Johnson. Everyone saw him play as right back or centre back last season. He played in the central defensive role on Tuesday night. And Scott Lindsay's obviously seen something in him. So Jay Williams, anything happens to him, who's been so good in that central defensive role, we know now that Travis Johnson can step into that role if needed. So, I think they're going to be stacked. I mean, I think Crawley will go into the game as favourites, but it won't be easy.
Well, just listening to the way you're talking about it, you compare that how we were talking about Crawley about this time last year. What a difference a year makes, Mark, for Crawley.
It is incredible. I think I've seen quite a few comments on social media just saying, wow, this Crawley side can play kind of thing. Weren't expecting this season. They are a really young side, but that's what Scott Lindsay wanted. And they've got a good mixture with a few experienced heads in there. But yeah, they are going to be a fun team to watch all year. I just can't wait till they play Wrexham, because Wrexham are a bit of a side that have scored loads, let in loads, although the last couple of games they've been a bit tighter. But there's going to be, whenever you watch Crawley Town, there will be goals, I think. And It is amazing, and just the feeling around the club as well. It's I mean, I've written a piece this week, 6 things we learned about the game from Tuesday night, and I've put in there that the word family has been used so much, and it's like the Fast and Furious franchise. It's ridiculous. And I think it is there's just a feeling around the club is great, and the fans, there is still their quarter, wag me out, etc., and all that, but there is a better feeling, and certainly on not just at the ground in person, but on social media as well, there is a slightly more positive feeling, and that is all down to Scott Lindsay and what he's done with building this squad that he's got now.
Good on him, and long may it continue. Finally, switching to cricket, the last round of the Sussex Cricket League fixtures were played last weekend, and there were high drama in both Division 2 and Division 3 West, wasn't there, Mark?
There was, yeah. All the eyes were on those 2 divisions because of everything being decided in the Premier League. So so in the second division, it was a shootout between West Chiltington, Worthing and Hastings. Worthing and Hastings were in the driving seat. If those 2 won, those 2 got promoted. But if either of them lost, then West Chiltington, if they'd won, would go up. All 3 teams won, so Hastings and Worthing go up. But they finished on exactly the same points, 383. Hastings on the Sussex Play League website were top, and I did investigate why that was. But between the 2 games, because of bonus points, etc., Hastings they beat each other once, but Hastings got 47 points in those 2 games, and Worthing got 37, I think. No, it was 42-37 was the split. So that's why Hastings were champions. But we've got Steve Bones written a good piece with skipper Harry Dunn of Worthing. They're just happy to be promoted and be in the Premier League next year. At the bottom, it was great. Burgess Hill, a great escape. They looked doomed about 5 weeks ago, but they won the last 4 games of the season and beat Chichester again in a straight shootout. Whoever won that game survived. So Brighton and Hove, Crowhurst and Chichester went down to their respective Division 3s. And in Division 3, again, the top 3 of that league was incredible. All year, it was Findon, Stenning, Ifield. And it was mainly in that order as well. Findon were top for most of it, Stenning second, Ifield third. But last game of the season, Ifield beat Findon and they jumped to the top. They've got the 1 automatic promotion spot. And now Stenning face Preston Nomad seconds from Division 3 East in a playoff this Saturday. So who goes up to Division 2? I think it's a bit harsh. 3 teams go down from Division 2.
Moving on to Steve Bones' score prediction corner. We'll start for the big game in Sussex this week. Crawley Town v Newport County. Mark, you've spoken a bit about the game, but how do you see it going?
It will be a cracking game. I think there will be goals, and I'm going to go for a 3-2 win for Crawley. Another thriller.
Frankie, do you agree?
Well, not only did I get the fact that Newcastle weren't going to win last weekend wrong, I also said their midfield was brilliant, and all 3 of their midfielders were atrocious.
They were terrible.
Including Tonali, who I really bigged up. He was awful. So this could not get any worse right now. I've hit rock bottom. So I'm going to go for 4-2 Crawley, because why not?
Derren, is it going to be goals galore?
Yeah, well, I'll continue with that. The way Crawley are playing, very open. So, yeah, I'll go a 3-1 to Crawley, I think. Looking
as mentioned, we're all positively giddy about the prospect of England playing a Euro qualifier and a completely pointless, really exciting friendly against Scotland. England travel to Poland to play Ukraine on Thursday, I want to say. Mark, how do you see that one going?
Don't care. England to win 2-0.
Well, we say that it's not particularly entertaining, but Derren, could we see any potential Brighton representation in that game against Ukraine?
Well, yeah. I'm going to be a bit more optimistic about it. I think it'd be a great chance for Lewis Dunk to get some game time. Really well deserved. He got called up towards the end of last season and had to pull out of the squad because of an injury. So it could be his first appearance in an England shirt for the first time in 5 years. He's only got 1 cap. And I think England are going to win 1-0. Lewis Dunk header from a corner.
Oh, Frankie, we can only dream of that, can't we?
Yeah, no, it'd be great to see Lewis Dunk England shirt again after been nearly 5 years since he was last called up and thoroughly deserved. If he doesn't, I don't think he'll start against Ukraine, but I certainly think he might be in for a starting place in the Scotland game. So that'd be great to see. Also, Levi Colwell as well. I know he's no longer a Brighton player, but I can imagine he might start against Ukraine, and an exciting young prospect that deserves to be playing for England and could be the future of England's defence. It'd be nice to see him play with John Stones at some point. I think that would be not John Stones, he's injured, apologies, but in the future to see him play alongside John Stones. So that's the only real positive I can find from these two games, which I imagine England will win quite comfortably. I imagine I could see a 3-0 win against Ukraine, and then I could say 3-1 against Scotland as well. So those are the only positives I can find.
Mark, are you remotely? I know it's obviously Scotland against England and all that comes with it, but a friend is a friendly, isn't it? It's a bit nothing.
Yeah, I agree with Frank. I was going to say 3-1 as well, England, and it just, yeah. I'll be rewatching the goals from Crawley versus Charlton in the EFL Trophy that night.
And finally, Derren, it's Billy Gilmore, Scotland, isn't it, against England? How do you see that one going?
Yeah, 3-1 Scotland, Billy Gilmore hat-trick, I think. But, no. Lewis Dunk with a consolation. And no, I think England will win that one as well. But probably be a little bit tighter. I'll go for a 2-1 to England for that one. Just
to save this before we end in misery, we should also make a special mention for Pascal Gross as well, because he's been called up to the Germany squad for the first time ever at 32. They played Japan and France in these two games. Obviously, Japan is a friend. I think both are actually friendlies, but so that gives him a real opportunity to win a cap, and thoroughly deserved. He's been Brighton's unsung hero for a number of years now, and he's one of their best players. So well done to him. Should be
absolutely
the finishing message.
Yeah, I've looked at that German squad for the last 2 years, and they've been struggling. And you think, how can he not even? Maybe not the team, but how can he not even get in that squad? It's thoroughly deserved.
Absolutely.
I suddenly love international friendlies. You've melted my
big deal.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for your time as ever, chaps. It's been brilliant. And you can catch up with all the latest sports news covering everything we've talked about today at sussexworld.co.uk/sport. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you all next week.